February 17th, 1991. It was a Sunday, clear-skied and mild near the mouth of the São Francisco River, where the states of Alagoas and Sergipe meet. Cousins Rafael Mendonça and Tiago Barbosa, 19 and 20 years old, set out on a kayaking excursion that would forever change the history of their families and the small community of Piaçabuçu, a town in Alagoas, with just over 15,000 inhabitants at the time. Rafael, a biology student at the Federal University of Alagoas, and Tiago, recently accepted into the environmental engineering program at the same institution, planned to document the region's biodiversity for an academic project. Both were well known in their community not only for their passion for environmental issues but also for their skill with boats. They had grown up by the river, the sons of artisanal fishermen whose families had drawn their livelihood from the waters of Old Chico for generations. According to family members, the young men left the port of Piaçabuçu around 6:30 in the morning, recounted Maria Conceição Mendonça, Rafael's mother, in her initial statement to the Alagoas Civil Police. They were equipped with 2 fiberglass kayaks, a Nikon camera, notebooks, supplies for 2 days, and a small tent. The plan was to navigate to the river's mouth, camp in the dune region known as the Pantanal Alagoano, and return the following afternoon. They were excited about the trip. Rafael wanted to photograph the migratory birds, and Tiago was keen to collect water samples for his future university project. The last confirmed sighting of the cousins was by João Batista, a local fisherman who saw them around 10 o'clock that morning, paddling toward the mouth of the river. "The boys seemed fine," João stated in his deposition. "They waved to me as I passed them in my boat. They were about 4 kilometers from the port, following the river's natural course." When Monday night came and the cousins had not returned as planned, their families alerted the Port Authority and the Alagoas Military Police. The first search operation began at 7 o'clock on the morning of Tuesday, February 19th, involving 3 Brazilian Navy vessels and dozens of volunteer fishermen from the area. But the weather, which had been so favorable on Sunday, had changed drastically. A tropical storm had hit the Alagoas coast overnight, with winds reaching up to 80 kilometers per hour and waves cresting at 3 meters high at the river's mouth. This factor significantly complicated the initial search and gave rise to the first theory, that the young men had been caught by the sudden storm. Where the São Francisco meets the sea, the waters can be treacherous even for those who know them well, explained Lieutenant Fernando Gomes of the Port Authority, who coordinated the first search efforts. With a storm like that one, the currents become deadlier still. After 3 days of intensive searching, only one of the kayaks was found. It was damaged and partially submerged, tangled in a sandbar approximately 2 kilometers from the river's mouth. There was no sign of the young men or their belongings. To follow more cases like this which shake entire communities and unearth hidden truths, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single investigation. The official investigation was led by the Piaçabuçu Civil Police, under Delegate Augusto Ferreira, with support from the federal police due to the nature of the case, a disappearance in an area bordering 2 states and close to the ocean. The first few weeks were marked by intensive searches covering more than 50 square kilometers, including the entire river path to its mouth, the adjacent dunes, and a 15-kilometer stretch of coastline. Helicopters from the Alagoas Military Police Air Unit flew over the area daily for 2 weeks. The primary line of inquiry pointed to an accident. Based on the recovered kayak and the adverse weather conditions that developed, the main hypothesis is that the young men were caught by the change in weather and were unable to return, stated Delegate Ferreira at a press conference on February 25, 1991. However, a puzzling element emerged when local fishermen reported seeing an unidentified medium-sized vessel near the area where the boys would have been on Sunday afternoon. This account, provided by 3 independent witnesses, opened a second line of investigation. A possible encounter with traffickers who used the maritime route to transport drugs between the northeast and southeast of the country. In the early 90s, that region was beginning to be used as an alternative trafficking route, explained Federal Police Agent Roberto Cavalcante, who was assigned to assist with the investigation. It was common for suspicious vessels to pass through the area, especially on weekends. Tiago's father, Paulo Barbosa, an experienced fisherman with profound knowledge of the region, questioned the accident theory from the start. "My son and my nephew knew those waters like the back of their hands," he asserted in an interview with the Gazeta de Alagoas newspaper in March 1991. They knew how to read the signs of the weather. They would never have taken a risk with a storm approaching. Something else happened out there. The investigation suffered its first major setback when, after 30 days with no new leads, the official search operation was scaled back. The families, refusing to give up, hired a private investigator, former federal police officer Marcos Vinicius Lima, who conducted a parallel investigation for another 6 months. Lima focused on the theory of an encounter with traffickers and managed to identify a suspicious vessel, the fishing boat Estrela do Mar, which had reportedly been seen in the region on the day of the disappearance. However, when the federal police finally located the boat in a port in Recife in October 1991, nothing concrete was found to link it to the case. A third line of investigation emerged when a local environmentalist, Severino Gomes, revealed that the cousins had expressed interest in documenting predatory fishing activities and the illegal dumping of industrial waste into the river. "Rafael came to see me about 2 weeks before," Severino stated. "He wanted to know about the spots where companies were dumping chemical products. They planned to collect samples and file official complaints." This testimony led investigators to consider the possibility that the young men had been victims of a premeditated crime to prevent them from exposing environmental violations. 3 regional companies were investigated, but no conclusive evidence of their involvement was found. By December 1991, 10 months after the disappearance, the investigation had stalled. The case file remained open, but without significant progress. The families, however, never stopped searching for answers. The case of the missing cousins lingered for years, becoming a local legend in Piaçabuçu. Between 1991 and 1999, searches continued intermittently, driven mainly by the families and fishermen who sympathized with their cause. The first significant break in years of silence came on October 17, 1998. A fisherman named Josue Santana found a metal canteen partially buried in the sand of a small river island known locally as Ilha do Mangasal. It was identified as belonging to Rafael. The young man's mother recognized it by a distinctive inscription, the initials RM engraved on the base. "That canteen was a 15th birthday present I gave my son," confirmed Maria Conceição. "He took it on all his expeditions." Her family's hope was rekindled. The location where the canteen was found, however, was more than 12 kilometers from where the kayak had been recovered years earlier and in the opposite direction of the river's mouth. This fact intrigued investigators and suggested that the boys' belongings might have been deliberately scattered to confuse the search. Delegate Augusto Ferreira, who had continued to follow the case even after his transfer to Macchio, officially reopened the inquiry. The discovery of this object, well preserved and in a place where it was unlikely to have been carried by the current, indicates human intervention, he declared in April 1999. A new search team was assembled, this time with more advanced technology. Navy divers used side-scan sonar to map the riverbed around the island where the canteen was found. In May 1999, they recovered fabric fragments which, after laboratory analysis were confirmed to be consistent with the material of the tent the young men had been carrying. But the most stunning revelation would come on August 23, 2000. A retired fisherman, Antonio Vieira, was fishing near the mouth of the São Francisco on the Sergipe side when he found a waterproof backpack, sealed with electrical tape, caught in the roots of a mangrove tree. The backpack was surprisingly well preserved thanks to its waterproof material and careful seal. Antonio took it to the authorities without opening it. When the federal police opened the bag in a documented procedure witnessed by the families, its contents left everyone in the room stunned. Inside was a notebook, 3 rolls of photographic film, and, most importantly, 2 handwritten letters from Rafael and Tiago dated February 18, 1991, the day after their disappearance. The letters, preserved in plastic bags inside the backpack, revealed that the young men had witnessed something disturbing. Rafael's letter read, "If anyone finds this backpack, please deliver it to the authorities. My cousin Tiago and I witnessed today, February 18th, around 7 a.m., a vessel unloading barrels at the mouth of the river. We managed to take pictures and are trying to get to Brejo Grande to report it, but we realize we are being followed. We have hidden the film in this backpack in case something happens to us. The coordinates of the dumping site are in the notebook." Their message was a testament to their bravery, a plea from the past to never give up on the truth, a sentiment shared by all who believe that every missing person deserves to be found. The film from the backpack was immediately sent for development at a specialized federal police lab in Brasilia. The images, though partially damaged by moisture that had eventually seeped in, were clear enough to identify a medium-sized vessel with no visible markings, and 5 men unloading large cylindrical metal barrels directly into the waters of the São Francisco. Rafael's notebook contained detailed notes on geographic coordinates, precise times, and physical descriptions of 3 of the men involved. It also included calculations estimating the volume of material dumped and hypotheses about its chemical composition, based on the discoloration of the water. The second letter, written by Tiago, added more information. "We are hiding in a dense mangrove area approximately 3 kilometers from the river mouth on the Sergipe bank. We saw the partial name of the vessel, S. Luisa. The men wore unmarked uniforms, but one of them, who seemed to be the leader, had a badge or pin on his chest that we couldn't identify from a distance. We will try to head north, circling by land to Brejo Grande, avoiding the river where we would be easily seen." These revelations completely changed the course of the investigation. The federal police took full control of the case and, based on the new evidence, focused on identifying the vessel and the individuals in the photographs. The partial name, S. Luisa, led investigators to a fishing boat named Santa Luisa, registered to a company called Nordeste Pesqueiro Lita, based in Aracaju. A search of the company's records revealed it was a subsidiary of Química Industrial do Nordeste, or Quine, a manufacturer of pesticides and industrial chemicals that had faced previous, though unproven, environmental complaints. In April 2001, the federal police, in partnership with the environmental agency IBAMA and the Federal Public Prosecutor's Office, conducted a raid on Quine's facilities in Aracaju. They found documents proving the manufacture of organochlorine compounds, which had been banned in Brazil since 1989, and records of special disposal that coincided with the dates of the young men's disappearance. 5 former employees of the company were identified from the photographs and summoned for questioning. 2 of them, under a plea bargain agreement, confessed. They admitted that the company had regularly carried out illegal dumping of toxic waste at the mouth of the São Francisco between 1990 and 1992, using the Santa Luisa as its transport vessel. According to their testimony on the morning of February 18, 1991, during a dumping operation, the crew realized they were being watched and photographed by two young men in kayaks. The person in charge of the operation, identified as Carlos Eduardo Menezes, a former military police officer and then head of security for Quine, ordered his men to intercept and intimidate the boys. The initial order wasn't to harm the boys, stated Marcos Oliveira, one of the informants, in his deposition. Just to get the evidence back and scare them so they wouldn't report the operation. But when they reached the cousins, there was resistance. The young men tried to flee, paddling swiftly toward an area of dense mangroves. The second informant, José Ricardo Santos, completed the account. Carlos Eduardo was furious when he heard the boys had escaped into the mangroves. He grabbed a gun and went after them himself in the speedboat with two other men. He said that this could cost the company millions and that he wouldn't let two annoying eco-freaks ruin everything. The informants did not witness what happened next, as they remained on the main vessel. But Carlos Eduardo and the other two men returned about 2 hours later, visibly agitated. Carlos's clothes were covered in mud and he had blood on his forearm as if he'd been injured in the swamp, Oliveira recounted. He just said that the problem was solved and that we should finish the dumping quickly and head back to Aracaju. Based on these depositions, the federal police launched an intensive search in the indicated mangrove area using ground-penetrating radar. In July of 2001, a grim discovery was made. Fragments of fabric, a wristwatch identified as belonging to Tiago, and most disturbingly, skeletal remains which, after DNA analysis, were confirmed to be those of the two young men. The exact cause of death could not be determined due to the advanced state of decomposition. However, the position of the remains and circumstantial evidence suggested a chilling narrative. The young men had been pursued through the mangrove, possibly shot from a distance, and their bodies deliberately concealed within the dense vegetation. By October 2001, the Federal Public Prosecutor's Office had charged Carlos Eduardo Menezes and 4 other former Quine employees with aggravated homicide, concealment of a corpse, and environmental crimes. The company and its directors were also accused of environmental crimes and obstruction of justice. The trial, held in 2003, resulted in the conviction of Carlos Eduardo, who was sentenced to 32 years in prison for homicide with 2 aggravating factors. 2 other defendants received sentences of 18 and 22 years, respectively, while the whistleblowers received reduced sentences of 8 years in a semi-open prison regime. Quine was ordered to pay a fine of 20 million euros for environmental damages and 5 million reais in compensation to each family. The discovery of the backpack containing the letters, 9 years after the disappearance, was the crucial turning point that unraveled the case. Without those letters and photographs, we would never have reached the truth, affirmed federal prosecutor Ricardo Magalhães, who led the prosecution. For the families, the resolution of the case brought a painful yet necessary closure. For years, we lived in the anguish of uncertainty. Now we can finally give our sons a dignified burial and begin the grieving process, declared Paulo Barbosa, Tiago's father, after the trial. In 2004, Rafael's mother, Maria Conceição, founded the Memoria Viva Institute, a non-governmental organization dedicated to assisting families of the disappeared and advocating for progress in unsolved cases. What happened to our sons cannot be forgotten, she stated. They died trying to protect the environment, exposing a crime that affected the entire riverbank community. Their courage will not be in vain. The case of the martyrs of the São Francisco, as Rafael and Tiago came to be known, led to significant changes in Brazilian environmental legislation. In 2005, the Rafael and Tiago Law was passed, increasing penalties for environmental crimes involving the illegal disposal of toxic waste and creating protection mechanisms for whistleblowers. Today, at the mouth of the São Francisco River, where the young men lost their lives, stands the Rafael and Tiago Memorial, an environmental education center that welcomes students from all over Brazil, promoting ecological awareness and the protection of our water resources. If you have listened this far, it is because you care about these cases that mark families forever. Please leave a comment saying, "I listened to the end," so I can know who you are and recognize those who truly care about the search for truth. Don't forget to like this story and share it with others who also value tales of courage and environmental justice.